Everybody already knows what they need to be doing differently to change their result in life. But nobody knows why they're not doing it.
Welcome to Satori Mindset Podcast. My name is Yuki Yoshii, and this is your time, your moment to reflect on yourself, your life, and to integrate your journey to feel aligned, and to ultimately make the awakened version of you a default mode. So let's begin.
Okay, so today I want to talk about three sentences that I heard from Bob Proctor speaking. This is not something that, is known quotes or anything, but over the years, spending going to his, training, in-person events, and being myself a consultant, being exposed to Bob Proctor's material, there are three things for me that stood out for me that spoke a little bit deeper that I remember, and that teaching is ingrained in what I do and how I work with people. So I want to share those three sentences, and then I want to really share that interpretation, my interpretation of it, and why it's so powerful. So the first one is my favorite, and that is the soul is forever seeking its awareness of oneness with God. So I often talk about we're a spiritual being living in this physical body and gifted with intellect. And Bob also said that. And I have been having this sort of internal conviction from an early stage in my life. I started my spiritual path when I was 17 and reading books after books to sort of explore the invisible world because I knew, not believing this, but knew that this was the foundation. Somewhere inside of me that already knew that this is what I need to tap into to really unpack the mystery of life because I saw people living on a rather surface base and the meaningfulness and why things are happening, those questions intrigue me very much. So we're a spiritual being and living a physical experience, not the other way around. A lot of people who sort of live inside of their mind and struggle and suffer in their day-to-day living, they want to have a spiritual experience to experience freedom, right? That's a completely opposite of what we want to do because if you are a spiritual being, it means that in that realm of the being, who you are, there's no suffering, there's no negativity, there's no polarity, right? So let's come back to the sentence. The soul that is you is forever seeking. So the soul that came here on this earth plane, given this body, given this opportunity called life, the school called life, is forever seeking its awareness of oneness with God. So, I often talk about we came here and started this journey of separation, right? We first separated from mother, and then we start forming an intellectual mind to have an individual sense of self. All those process is a path in the journey of separation. And the more we identify ourselves as the physical body and this individuality that lives in our mind, we sort of lose this touch from the whole, the connectedness and the oneness of it. So if you are watching and if you have been on a spiritual path, probably you're familiar and aware of this analogy that we are all one, we are all connected, right? So what that really means that the fundamental dimension of who we are is one and there's no separation. And it's important to begin practicing identifying ourselves as that. And if we don't do so, we get trapped into this misidentification of the I as the mind. I that is conceiving myself is the actual I, right? That's an illusion of the mind. So I hope I didn't confuse with that because it gets a little bit tricky depending on what lens you're listening to what I'm talking about from. Yeah. So the soul is forever seeking its awareness of oneness with God, right? So awareness is something that expands and continue to expand to realize who we are. And the soul that came here is seeking and constantly wanting to return back home, which is the sense of connectedness, the state of being that feels that oneness. And we are constantly looking for ways to become more aware of that because here's the truth. We are not trying to connect back with the creator or the wholeness of who we are. We are always connected. So when we become aware that we experience it, right? So it's not that we are disconnected and we are wanting to find a way back to connect. We are always connected. That's why the soul is seeking its awareness of oneness with God. Brilliant statement. That was number one. Number two is interesting because this is something that he kind of mentioned in the event from the stage. Everybody already knows what they need to be doing differently to change their result in life. But nobody knows why they're not doing it. Let me say this again. Everybody already knows what they need to be doing differently to change their result in life, right? It could be, you want to change your body, or you want to change the habitual stuff, or you want to change the result in your business or relationship, your reaction pattern, right? They already know what needs to be changed to create a different result and experience in life. But nobody knows why they're not actually consistently engaging in that and forgetting it. Nobody knows why they're not doing it. And one of the things that the main piece of his teaching was to teach paradigm, what paradigm is. Paradigm is a multitude of habit that's embedded in the subconscious level. And we have this thing called programming, subconscious programming that we inherited from our parents. We receive and absorb from our surrounding from the age of 0 to 7, even when we were in mother's womb. So even before we came out into this earth plane, in this land place, because when we are in the womb, we are inside of water, we are receiving all those informations, and that becomes fixated as a subconscious programming. And that becomes a way of thinking, behavior, the way we show up. So at the conscious level, we sort of become aware that, oh, I want to get this result. I want to create this kind of lifestyle. And we continue to behave as if we're the opposite because what runs our life is based on the subconscious behavior. Like 98%, it's been said that 98% of our behaviors are run by our subconscious mind. So when we have those programmings or when we have those stories, that feeling of the sense of self, who we feel we are, that becomes the cause of doing things in a way that we have always been doing because that feels familiar. So everybody already knows what they need to be doing differently to change their result, but nobody knows why they're not doing it because it runs by subconscious, right? It's beneath of the conscious level. That's number two. So number three is if you do not consciously and deliberately form a good habit, you subconsciously start forming a bad one. Yeah, let me say that again. If you do not consciously and deliberately form a good habit, you start subconsciously forming a bad one. And I like to sort of use the analogy of like a climbing mountain, right? If you are not going up, gravity exists, so it's going to pull you down, 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 right? So, and this can apply to a small piece of, let's say, if you have a habit of thinking or worrying about something, right? Let's say if you have a habit and tendency of experiencing doubt and worries in your life, which is very common for a lot of people. Now, you cannot change that by focusing on not wanting to feel worried about because your subconscious mind cannot hear the term not. So then, if you're not wanting to feel worry, you're focusing on the worry, you're giving energy to it, right? Then, what we want to do is if you want to change that, you want to identify that that is the pattern, and then you come up with the opposite. What is the opposite of worry and doubt? It's a certainty and a sense of peace, right? Now, your mind needs to be deliberately and consciously stay connected to how it feels to be peaceful. What would you be thinking when you're certain about stuff, right? All those positive and empowering, expansive stuff, you want to deliberately and consciously stay in that expansive side of your thoughts and feeling. And if you don't deliberately do that, you subconsciously, as a default mode, begin going back to what's familiar, which is to think in worry and doubt. So, those are the three sentences that really spoke to me that I have been actually practicing on a weekly, if not daily basis. And I infuse in my teaching everywhere I go. So I'm curious to know what spoke to you the most, which one of the three speaks to you the most, and what part of that, right? And how would you be implementing that to begin shifting your life?
Thank you for listening to the podcast. A message I want you to take with you is this: you have a power to choose how you see yourself and the world at any given moment. So stay connected to that wisdom.